Welcome to the debate. Hip-hop culture, it really sits at a crucial inflection point right now. I mean, we're talking a $16 billion global industry. It's basically the soundtrack of our digital world. But its sheer technological velocity, the integration of AI production tools, these powerful streaming algorithms, it's forcing a fundamental reckoning with its roots.
And the stakes are huge, right? We're really examining whether this whole digital revolution genuinely, democratizes creativity and drives innovation within hip hop, or is it actually diluting the artistic integrity, the cultural authenticity that really defines the genre?
Exactly. And my position, well, simply put, is that technology is the necessary engine of progress here. AI and algorithms are powerful, they're accessible tools, they drive innovation, they tear down old barriers, and ultimately, I think they expand the reach and the depth of the genre.
Why you think that? I do. But I come at it from a slightly different angle. Look, we're not merely debating the adoption of a new synthesizer here. We are discussing the structural reorganization of creativity itself. So while technology offers undeniable access, sure, these new digital mechanisms of discovery and the commercial demands, frankly, of the platforms, I believe they're fundamentally corrupting the core artistic process. We're essentially trading human gatekeepers for algorithmic ones. And those algorithms, well, they prioritize optimization over originality.
Okay, let me lay out my core stance then. For me, technology is merely a new instrument. And arguing against it, well, it feels like arguing against the entire march of musical history. It democratizes access, it accelerates the creative timeline, and it opens up artistic pathways that, let's be honest, were previously reserved for those with capital. And we see overwhelming evidence of this utility. Something like 60% of musicians now use some form of AI tool in their projects. This isn't some niche debate anymore. This is the reality of widespread practical utility. We shouldn't confuse that utility with artistic dilution.
Utility for whom, though? That's my question. And, crucially, at what cost to the culture itself?
Well, I'd argue the cost is minimal compared to the benefit. I mean, look at tools like SoundDraw, or Amper Music, or even Suno AI. They enable beat making within minutes. Now, that level of accessibility allows, say, a young producer in Lagos or London, someone who maybe lacks access to expensive sampling gear or high-end studio time, to just bypass those financial constraints. They can jump straight to the essence of hip-hop, crafting the lyrics, defining the flow, delivering the message. This actually gives the human artist more time to focus on the cultural precision of their storytelling. And look, even pioneers like Timbaland, a foundational beat maker, he's embraced AI as a tool for late-career creativity. That shows that even the originators recognize its value as a powerful extension of human ingenuity.
I'm just not fully convinced by that line of reasoning because, well, it feels like it willfully ignores how that creative utility is then monetized and controlled. You focus on the democratization of the tool, okay, but I'm focusing on the centralization of power through the algorithm. We are absolutely exchanging one form of gatekeeping, the traditional A&R exec, for another. And this new one, it's a black box algorithm.
That's an interesting point, though. I would probably frame it differently. The algorithm, to me, is more like a mirror. It's reflecting listener choices, not acting as some kind of dictator.
But is it just reflecting or is it shaping listener demand? I think it's doing both. Consider this sort of paradox of discovery. 30% of Spotify streams come directly from AI recommendations. These curated realities, think about the potent rap caviar effect. They act as modern, incredibly powerful tastemakers. And this concentration of power, it dictates what success looks like, universally favoring the globally optimized sound. It selects for sonic characteristics that perform well internationally, and that often means smoothing over the raw, maybe idiosyncratic, regional authenticity that has historically defined hip-hop subgenres. So my question is, can the genre truly thrive globally if its destiny is decided by an algorithm trained primarily on mainstream, largely English-language datasets?
Okay, that is a serious structural critique of the platforms themselves. I grant you that. But let's just return to the creation process for a moment, because I think you're kind of conflating the scaffolding with the final building here.
When we talk about AI beat making, right, the machine might be like a high-speed assembly line, yeah, but the human remains the architect.
See, I disagree fundamentally there. Because the essence of hip hop, for me, is rooted not just in the final product, but in the necessity of the craft. It was born out of resistance, right? Out of utilizing limited resources to reflect honest, lived societal realities. So when AI handles what you call the repetitive elements, it removes that necessity, that discipline, maybe, of the craft itself. I think about the hours spent digging through crates for the perfect sample, the struggle to create a complex rhythm from almost nothing. That struggle, that dedication, it's almost a cultural rite of passage. It's a form of historical education inherent to the genre. And when you replace that whole process with instant optimized creation, well, you might generate technically proficient beats, sure, but do they have that same sense of hunger? That context? Can a machine truly convey the authenticity of the struggle that birthed this genre? I really doubt it.
I see the appeal of that sort of romantic view that if art is created with difficulty, it must be inherently more valuable. But I have to reject the premise that efficiency automatically kills depth. The artist still defines the cultural messaging, the lyrics, the complex narrative. The AI, it merely provides the infrastructure, freeing up mental bandwidth. Are we seriously suggesting that the artists who pioneered the genre, who are often fiercely innovative and seeking out new technology themselves, would suddenly halt progress just because a tool makes one part of the job easier? I don't think so. No. The new struggle is conceptual. It's about directing the vast power of the machine to serve a human, complex, maybe political or social narrative. That's where the focus belongs now.
You make a compelling argument about the shift in artistic focus. I'll give you that. But that shift, I believe, is being severely constrained by the very platforms that host the work. Let's maybe move past the beat creation itself and look again at the algorithms, because they are perhaps the most influential gatekeepers today. We both celebrate the global reach of hip-hop, sure, but the streaming model as it stands reinforces specific existing linguistic and regional power structures.
How so, specifically?
Well, I want to highlight the documented algorithmic bias toward English language hip-hop and pop. That bias isn't just incidental, it feels baked into the discovery mechanism. So how can a truly global culture maintain its diverse linguistic and regional roots? The deeply complex narratives embedded in French rap, for example, or the unique localized rhythms of Brazilian rap, when the dominant curation model disproportionately favors the mainstream, primarily US-centric product. To me, this is a clear dilution of global diversity.
That's a powerful point regarding linguistic diversity. And the bias is real. I agree. It's a significant ethical and cultural hurdle that platform designers absolutely must address. However, and this is important, I must give credit where it's due. These platforms have also democratized visibility in ways that simply didn't exist in the 90s or the 2000s. They've often broken the rigid structure of the traditional label model.
Broken the label structure only to impose an equally rigid, arguably less transparent platform structure.
Perhaps, but consider the emergence of microgenres. Hatted movements like funk, that dark, aggressive electronic sound built on old Southern hip-hop samples, or even sigilcore, that really niche, abstract internet rap. How did they emerge so rapidly and gain these massive global followings? These were underground sounds. They would have never received traditional label funding or radio airplay. It was precisely through algorithmic visibility on platforms like TikTok and YouTube that they found these hyper-efficient routes to dedicated fan bases. Now, if the algorithm truly only favored the mainstream, these idiosyncratic regional microgenres just wouldn't have scaled globally the way they have. So they actually prove that the algorithm can break traditional gatekeeping, even if it has significant flaws.
That's fair. They can accelerate niche discovery, I concede that. But they accelerate it directly toward what feels like a single commercial endpoint, virality. And this brings us right back to what I see as the most critical point, the commodification of the culture and, well, the tyranny of the 15-second rule.
The TikTok effect.
Exactly. The sheer dominance of hip-hop on short-form content. 118 billion views on TikTok alone in 2020. It forces artists to craft these hookable moments designed purely for immediate engagement. This fundamentally cheapens artistic integrity. We are sacrificing conceptual depth for immediate metrics, plain and simple.
But hold on.
The creation of hookable moments is simply adaptation to the medium. This adaptation is precisely why hip-hop has remained so culturally relevant for over 50 years. Every single era of music adapts. When radio became the primary vehicle, artists adapted their compositions to the tight 3-minute format, right? They cut long bridges, complex instrumental passages. When MTV became dominant, artists adapted to visual storytelling, making the visual hook just as important as the sonic one. This is simply the latest evolution. This flexibility, the ability to bend without breaking, that's what ensures the genre's continued dominance.
But I think this bending has become a fundamental break. The 15-second rule doesn't just encourage hooks, it mandates simplicity. It prioritizes engagement metrics, likes, shares, dance challenges, over any kind of lasting cultural contribution. Think about what we lose in that exchange. We potentially lose the 6-minute story arc of a deeply political Kendrick Lamar track, maybe, or the complex layered narrative cohesion of a classic concept album. We are trading the vehicle for deep narrative storytelling, which defines conscious rap, or even the raw honesty of early drill music, for an ephemeral, repetitive loop. It turns complex, multi-layered cultural expression into disposable viral fodder. That, to me, is the definition of dilution, not innovation.
I definitely see the inherent conflict there, that fear that efficiency and optimization might kill depth. But I still hold that technological progress, despite its significant structural flaws, which we've discussed, is inevitable. And I'd argue it's absolutely necessary for the genre's continued global influence and, frankly, its financial independence moving forward. AI and algorithms provide unprecedented access and financial opportunities, perhaps through future models like blockchain and decentralized platforms that grassroots hip-hop can, and I think must harness. If we fear the tools themselves, we risk cultural stagnation, allowing other, maybe more adaptive genres to take the lead.
My deepest concern is that in embracing the tools and the platforms wholesale, without sufficient critique, we risk losing the very soul of the movement. Hip-hop, as I said, was born out of resistance. It came from the necessity of creating something powerful with often next to nothing. If the entire process of creation and consumption becomes automated or dictated solely by the demands of short-form virality, then the cultural depth, the honest reflection, the spirit of resistance that birthed hip-hop, well, it could eventually be optimized right out of existence. The culture has to rigorously define and protect its authenticity against these forces of pure commerce.
Yeah. And I think we both agree that this tension, this pull between technological innovation on one side and the preservation of core cultural identity on the other, that really is the defining philosophical challenge for the future of hip-hop. The digital age, it provides the largest canvas the genre has ever seen. The debate that remains is whether the resulting art will be truly authentic or merely, generated by rote.
Precisely. And I suppose we leave the listeners to weigh those incredible benefits of democratization and global reach against the very real structural risks of cultural dilution and algorithmic bias. There's certainly much more to explore within this material, especially as the technology continues to evolve at such a rapid pace.
Well said. We appreciate you joining us for this crucial discussion on the digital evolution of hip-hop. Announcer voice. We also produce music dream, pop music like Cigarette After Sex, Lana Del Rey, etc. Do check it out, link in the description.